Welcome to the channel. We're making bucktails. I've been busy making topwater ones, and in this one, as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to make a more traditional style bucktail. This is a two-piece, and it's going to have a French blade on it. So I'm going to go through some of the supplies we're going to need for this. So we're going to need some bucktails. I'm going to tie this one in a fire tiger pattern. We're going to need some hooks. These are 6/0 Gamakatsu hooks with an open eye so I can crimp them on after. When I make these lures, I like using a single hook, a pair of single hooks. We have to do a lot of catch and release around here, especially for trophy fish, and the single hooks just do less damage. Do I miss some fish because of that? Probably, but because the trophies have to be released here, I'd rather do less damage. Need some glue. You can use whatever you like. I'm using clear nail polish because I'm cheap and it works. You can use Gorilla Glue. You can use all kinds of stuff for that. Going to need some scissors, some cutters, some vice grips are handy. Need a lure body. This is just a worm weight. 3/8 or ½ ounce plastic beads. We're going to need a number 5 French blade. This is a number 4 stirrup clevis. And when you order your clevises, you order the hole in the clevis. You want to match it to the wire diameter. Going to need some stainless wire. I like using these ones. Has one eye already tied on the end of it for you. Saves you a little bit of work. I've got some straight links here which I cut in half to make the tail of the lure. And you know, this is something you can do with beer for sure. Personally, I like to work with scotch. So let's get started. Alright, so this is the jig we've seen before. So to get started, I'm going to cut this wire in half. I've just got a mark on my bench here. So you set it in. It bends the wire around that loop, and then it catches in the corner of this and puts that little straightening bend on it. So I'm going to try and do this so we can see it. It goes into the slot like that. If you push this wire against that side, it makes a nice tight barrel wrap. So I'm going to try and do that, but keep my fingers out of the way so we can see this in the camera. Apologize for my shaky hands. It's not the scotch, let's not blame that. There. So it makes a pretty nice eye. It leaves a little tag, but we can clean that up. Hopefully this is I want to do a little bit better close-up of this jig. Wire goes in, sits in the notch there. Bend it around. And then once this wire catches the corner of this, it puts that little straightening bend in it. Like so. So it goes in like so. And you catch that tag end in the groove, and then you do the barrel wrap. Goes in like so. So it does leave a little tag sometimes, and that's easy enough to trim off. So do the other side. So my crude measurement of this is I give myself about 2 thumbs for the size of lure I'm making right now. And just roll it up. I'm making these lures in 2 pieces. So right now we're making the back half of this lure. And we're going to tie the bucktail on this, and then we'll assemble the front and do a barrel wrap on it, and then we'll have a bucktail. A question that came up on one of my other videos is, do I make these and sell these jigs? I don't have plans to do that. The workshop that I work in, where I built this, I rushed to build this before the winter moved in because it's not insulated, not heated. It's -20 Celsius right now, so I won't be out in my workshop making any of these anytime soon. And I just don't have time. You know, I'd like to make a bunch of these. I know there's people that would want these. I put some links in my previous video, and I'll put them back in this one, that gave me the inspiration on how to build these. Not too difficult to build. Alright, so we'll take the wire we formed, we'll put it in our vise, and then we'll get started to tie this up. Alright, so to start, attach our thread to the wire here. Sorry if it's a bit shaky. My bench, I lost a foot on my bench and I've got it propped up for now. Got to fix it. But I have a whole bunch of pieces of this thread and I'm just too cheap to not use it. So we'll secure the thread to the wire here. And then we're going to make a fire tiger pattern. So I'm going to tie it in 3 colors, orange, green, and black, and I'm just going to do this in stripes. When you first start this, start with a small amount. And then you can bulk it up a little bit more once you get the first little bit on here. Tighten it down. Give yourself a knot. I'm just going to add a little bit more orange. These are medium-sized bucktails, what I consider medium-sized. And so I don't like too much bulky hair on them. I find if you bulk these ones up this size, if you bulk them up too much, they become pretty buoyant. And they don't cast as well. They have a lot of hair on them. They tend not to cast as far. Just my personal opinion. So I keep mine maybe a little bit more sparse than you would. And if you're watching this to learn how to make them and you're going to make your own, then you can make them as bulky as you like. That's the best part about doing your own thing, is you can make it how you want it. Okay, so add some chartreuse here. Turn this in the vise and then we'll put some black on the other side. I also tie my lures a little bit more sparse maybe than others would because I'm cheap. They used to be $10 or $12 a while ago, and now, you know, you're approaching $30+ for one of these raw bucktails. They get expensive. So I try to make mine go as far as I possibly can because I'm cheap. I think I mentioned that before. I'm trying to make these lures, you know, as simple as possible and as cheaply as possible, not because I can't do it differently, but because these things get tore up anyways, and for my own personal enjoyment, it doesn't matter to me if the lure body's not painted, because it doesn't matter to the fish. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this up with a taper. Taper this in, and do one more, and then do one more set of color on it, and we'll see how we're doing. A little bit of glue, getting a little low on this bottle of glue. I got to switch over to another one, but we're going to use as much of this as we can because, as I've mentioned before, I'm cheap. I'm going to just start some thread. We've seen that before. Get some orange on there. There. Okay, and then we'll just add a little bit of chartreuse. And then we'll add a little bit of black. And then we'll tie up the front of this thing. I can usually crank out one of these lures in about 20 minutes to half an hour, depending. So they're pretty quick to make once you get the hang of it. And that's what's nice about them, is you can spend as much or as little time on this as you want and make them exactly how you want them. If you want to spend a bunch of time and make them exactly right and showpieces, I encourage it. I used to do that. There's a fine line between lazy and efficient, and I like to think the way I do these things is efficient. Put on some black, like so. So I'm just going to taper this in. We'll need one more piece of thread here, and then we'll move on to the front part. It's important when you're doing this that you move your glass of scotch out of the way. You don't want to end up with bucktail or threads in your scotch. Very important. Layer of glue, and we got this one licked. We're going to assemble this part next. So I've gone ahead and assembled the front part of this lure and tied the barrel wrap and put the part that we just tied in the vise. Unfortunately, I didn't press record for this part. To make the front part of the lure, I tried to put a bead ahead of the clevis. I think it keeps some of the junk out of there if you're getting into some weeds. I like to have a metal one behind the clevis. It just seems to last longer. And then you can put whatever color you like here. I just have orange ones left. So I'm going to put, so I'll do an orange one at the top here, like so. Then I'm going to use a number 4 stirrup clevis. And you order these, the hole size in these matches the wire you're using. This is 040 inch. So this is a number 4 clevis, I believe. But you order the clevis to match the size of lure you're making. Pay attention to which way the blade goes on so you don't put them on backwards. If you do happen to make that mistake, those are good giveaways to friends. Like so. And then again, I like to use a solid metal one after the clevis. That. And then I'm going to put on 3 plastic ones. Why 3? It's just something I've done for years. A bead, the clevis and blade, a metal bead, 3 plastics, and a lure body. So we leave ourselves some. These are the longer wires I use, so there's a little bit of waste on these ones, which is unfortunate. But so I usually give myself about 2 thumb widths, about like so. So I put this in the vice grip. And again, this goes into the jig. Sorry for the shakiness. Rotate it like so. You only need a couple wraps on there. This is like 300-pound test stainless. You know, you don't need too many wraps here. It's very, very strong. So that's basically the idea. Trim off the excess here, and then we'll trap this in my tying vise, and we'll finish the hair on this. Something I'll mention when you're making these lures is when you are putting your spacers here and the lure body with a blade like this, you want to make sure that your blade doesn't reach the bucktail. If you make this too short and your blade reaches the bucktail, the spinning of the blade can actually cut the bucktail hair. So you want to make sure you have the blade spaced so that it can't reach the thread or the bucktail. Okay, so I've gone ahead and mounted this in my vise. Again, I like to have this section on a bit of a downhill. It keeps all of these accessories out of your way while you're tying. So I'm going to add some thread, and it's just the same process again. So I'm going to start with orange. Start with a little bit. I'll just work around and bulk it up. It's important while you're doing this to get the thread caught in the eye of the lure as much as possible. Now we'll start to build the fire tiger. I'll use some green. Some people like to have their stripes very much lined up on these things. And for me, I kind of like them to be offset and a little bit more random when they're all together. So when the second layer goes on, I won't perfectly line up the stripes. I think it adds a bit of depth to it, but you know, you experiment around and make it the way you like it. That's the best part of making your own lures. Ultimately, you can make these how you like them, and you can experiment around on how you'd like these to look. So you can try different kinds of stripes and layers. But you know, when you're first starting, you'll experiment with all different kinds of designs. I think that's great. Okay, so from here, this gets tapered down, and then the next layer goes on. So I'm going to speed through this. Layer of glue. We'll start the next color. Alright, we'll add our colors. And then this one's going to be done. Alright, glue it. A couple strays here. No big deal. Taper this in and probably put a second layer on here of thread just to armor it. And then this is pretty much complete. Alright, so we have the taper in place. Just glue it, we'll take it out of the vise and take a look at it. Like I said, you can tie up, once you get good at these and you find the method that works good for you, these tie up pretty quick. And, you know, in no time you have a pretty good collection of lures that look really good. And they work like crazy, that's the most important part. Alright, it has to dry, but we'll take it out of the vise and have a look at what we got. The stripes line up a little more than I thought, but call that Fire Tiger. There we go. Because these are batch made by an artisan, they're not always the same, which is okay too. But I think they're pretty good looking lures. And they're not that hard to make, and they work like crazy. Try making some lures, see what you can come up with. Thanks a lot for watching.